Hello, Eurovision fans. My name is Euan. This is that Eurovision site, Eurovision with a slice of life. Joining me today is
Good miteinander. Jonathan.
okay. Well, someone is being a bit cocky already and showing off their linguistic skills, because we are going to be discussing Eurovision host cities. We do recommend that you listen to our first part, which we were discussing Geneva, which is one of the two shortlisted cities. The second one, and the one that we'll be discussing today, is Basel. So Basel is one of the in comparatively smaller cities right in the north of Switzerland. It just borders the Franco-German border. It's very interesting in its with its strange airport that is actually in France, but is technically in three separate countries. So yeah, those are all my fun facts about Basel, but I think the person who should be giving all the fun facts about the city is, of course, Jonathan.
Yeah. So I've not lived in Basel, but I lived half an hour from Basel in the French part in in the canton of Jura. Uh, um, and Basel Airport is one of my least favorite airports in the world. It's awful. It's run by two countries, and neither of them seems to know which like who's doing what. It's flights are always delayed. Maybe that's just always taking EasyJet, but flights are always delayed. It's not easy to get to. There's only one bus, but there is a fun thing when you get out of security. You have a sign saying France that way, Germany that way, Switzerland that way, which is quite a weird thing. Um, yeah, Basel. It's like third or fourth biggest city in Switzerland, but it's certainly the most. It's almost the least Swiss of the cities in Switzerland because it is so much on the border and it's so shared. And it's got such a huge commuter population that comes in from France and Germany every day. And it's sort of the more European, the more outward looking city in Switzerland. It's on the banks of the Rhine. It's probably the largest in that bit of the Rhine. It's the largest sort of metropolitan center for quite a while, actually. So it takes in a lot of commerce and a lot of weight from that bit of Germany and that bit of France as well. So it's used to kind of a lot of people coming in and building itself. That's a great city as well. Swim in the
I find it
Rhine.
really interesting you're saying like how in terms of like being a catchment area, because when you look at a map, which if you actually get
Mm.
very little in terms of information from these maps, it just seems like there's basically nothing in like that bit of like Baden-Württemberg and that bit of Alsace. And it's like so it's really interesting you're saying there is actually like people that do come in
Yeah, I mean,
um
it
to that
serves.
city.
It's sort of the Swiss, so the Basel almost countryside in a sense. It's a bit beyond Basel. Like there's uh, so the main station in Basel obviously it does a lot of Swiss services, but it's got a direct TER link to Strasbourg. Um, so it's got a direct link into France, and then there's also an entirely different station on the other side of the town, which is a German station run by Deutsche Bahn. So it literally those two bit like the countryside around it and the towns north of Basel have direct links into it, and this is a logical place to go for those people. Like it just brings them down into the city.
Hmm.
There's not much in that part of France and Germany, to be fair. Um,
Well, potentially there's going to be
a lot of
hundreds
Euro
of thousands
fans.
of million Virgin fans who have just decided to book some random hotel run by some person who's not expecting to be able to getting hundreds of Eurovision fans. We do advise that you listen to our first part where we discussed a lot of these things that
Mm.
we're going to be discussing with Basel for our Geneva one. So looking into so with your experience with the city, you've mentioned transport. How easy is it for you to actually like get around the city itself?
Oh, very easy. It's the functional part of the city, the important bit, is almost entirely walkable. Jakobshalle isn't kind of necessarily in that part, but there are amazing tram links all around the city. There's a really comprehensive bus network, kind of takes you all the way from like it takes you into France. Germany's a bit harder to connect to. There's not as much infrastructure on the German side, and the train lines that run from Germany are a bit German. But on certainly going in and out of France, that's where the majority, like a vast majority of the commuter population comes from, that part of France. Really good
Well, it
road
makes
links.
sense because they are trying to annex that bit of France, aren't they?
Ooh, yeah, building an airport there, putting their transport links up there, showing French people how much nicer life could be if they were Swiss.
Well, maybe Eurovision 2035 or whenever it'll be, they can be in the
Yeah.
French bit, joint bid
Saint
there,
Louis, Saint Louis.
because we did almost have a joint bid this year with Bern and BLBN.
Mm-hmm.
So why not a joint bid for in the future? So for me, I personally thought this was the weakest of the four
Mm.
bids. Because their hosting capacities in terms of arena seems a little bit questionable. So they don't have the set venue that they want to host it in. They're saying it's either going to be in St. Jacobs Park or St. Jacobs Halle.
Mm.
St. Jacobs Park is like 35,000 seater stadium,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have a roof.
Yeah. So that's
And every year we've got this. Like, can they just stop saying like if it doesn't have a roof, just don't even bother because why do we
you
need to go through this every single year? It's like
millions of
maybe they
euros
can
of
build a
camera
roof. Look,
equipment.
yes, Azerbaijan spent €1 billion on Eurovision and built a $400 million stadium in like 4 months. I don't think anyone is ever going to do that again.
No one should
Despite
be allowed
how
to. Yeah.
true. So yeah, they're not going to be that level of construction. But that being said, St. Jakobshalle, which does have a roof, apparently doesn't have a roof that's actually suitable to take all of the truss supports, and they said that they'll need to do construction on it. Now, whether they're just saying, okay, we need to build the typical truss, or oh no, we need to do massive construction. They were a bit vague on how that actually is, but if it's the latter, why are we entertaining this thought?
Mm. Yeah. We put it like that because Jakobsson has hosted big events like this, and it has it's open like the Davis Cup, and it's big concerts. So it's got sort of the infrastructure in like the people who work there to know how to put on a good show.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah,
and
I
you
think
would
we can trust the Swiss with infrastructure and things like that.
that's also true. I'm just used to having to think about British things and things just not working and French things. But like, yeah, I think I do kind of trust the Swiss to be able to put up a truss and to reconstruct. And it's kind of one of those things where it's a level of investment into a venue that does pay dividends over the course of its sort of life because you can have bigger shows, artists can do more, and you could charge more things for it. Um, yeah, I'm not too worried about the arena. I actually think that the arena itself is a bit more suited to what Eurovision needs it to be than Geneva's one. Um, yeah, it's also easier to get around Basel if that's that part of Basel without sort of resorting to public transport. It's easy to get out of Basel as well. You have actually more options to go out to because you can go into the rest of Switzerland, and there's more Switzerland in that bit that you can get into. So if you want to stay in
Mhm.
Ulten or in Delimont, not sure why you want to do that, but you could.
Because
You can actually
inevitably
get
people will be booking hotels in random cities that they probably should not be booking hotels in, and then just getting the train in.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that is good. That is good in that sense. And I think, although yeah, like St. Jakobshalle, like there is that potential issue. It is that sort of sweet spot of it's like what 12,500 people,
yeah,
which it's because it's a tennis or
yeah.
ice hockey venue,
Oh yes,
which are
and that's
like
it. It's an
those.
ice hockey venue.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, like those are the perfect Eurovision host venues. I know I've slagged this off, but like also need to talk about the positives because we can't all be negative on this for this video. We
oh, we
need
could
to be
try.
positive. We can be positive. Um, those are sort of the sweet spots because when you get like your 20,000 foot Altis Arena, when you're in that,
Yeah,
it's not very fun. It's you can barely see anything, you can barely hear anything because you've just got thousands of screaming fans around you
mm.
and you can't see the stage. But like that 12,500 you're getting so much, there's so much space, you can breathe, you can see everything, and it doesn't feel too cramped because you can have a massive stage. But then when you got one that's too small, like I can't actually remember the name of what it was in Kiev, but it was terrible. It was so
I wasn't
small.
there, but yeah, was it just a
And it
bit too?
sounded terrible. Yeah, it's just it's too small and it's yeah, it's just terrible atmosphere. So it's like that sort of sweet spot of like ice hockey arenas. If you have an ice hockey league, you should be hosting Eurovision every single year. I think that should be a requirement that we should put in.
So just
So
which is between Sweden, Switzerland, who else?
Finland,
Finland, Canada.
Norway. I wouldn't be that opposed to Newfoundland
Yeah, specifically
hosting.
Newfoundland. Yeah,
Yeah, but
Yeah,
then you go far at the further ends, like you've got to get connecting flights, and like not all of us live near very good airports. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Speaking of, there are a lot flights into Basel from aren't as regular as they are into Geneva. It's not as much of a destination
Mm.
for regular
However,
flights.
they are shockingly cheaper than any. I said this in previous videos. Like I'm here for whatever's cheapest for me. I
Mm.
don't care whether it's suitable or not. And the flights there seem considerably cheaper than any of the Eurovisions that I've paid for. So, in that sense, Basel is a great host. Would
Mm.
be an excellent choice. Because it is a smaller city and you're saying it's got that cultural vibe, do you think that it would be a good place to embrace the contest or
Oh
sort
yeah,
of get
yeah.
swallowed up by it?
Again, as we talked about in the Geneva video, which you should go and listen to. It is this year is hamstrung by the fact that Eurovision isn't seen as much of as a fun thing by European audience and casual casuals um in the cities, like young people in the cities, as it would have been like when Liverpool were hosting, or when Kiev and Lisbon were taking on. So there is a sort of kind of tension around it. But as a city, Basel is sort of the cultural capital of Switzerland. It's got lots of museums, lots of big touring artists go through there. It's got a great kind of music scene. Um, and it's the kind of place that would really embrace what a Eurovision fan is, and the kind of energy that we bring to a city. It really is a kind of, in a way that's quite un-Swiss. It's very much a kind of chill, lay back, kind of go to the Rhine, have a drink, have a swim, be together, get out. It's a very sociable city, and I think that's much more in keeping with what Eurovision fans like want, and what like who might be welcoming to Eurovision fans than I think the other, certainly more than Zurich would have been. Um,
I find
and
it interesting you're saying that because when they talked about their bid and like the potential of them hosting before they officially confirmed, they referenced events that yeah, they mentioned like the Euros, but most of the other things that they talked about were like very corporate
hmm,
convention sort of things. It wasn't really a focus on like fun cultural things. So it's quite interesting, like the
yeah,
disconnect between what you're saying there.
it does have a disconnect within itself, because it's also, beside being having the most museums of and all these like artistic universities, it's also the home of the pharmaceutical industry and lots of banks, which is very which is kind of the opposite of Eurovision. Not actually, it's not, but it's kind of the opposite sort of the side of that coin. It's got a huge kind of, but that's just because it's a very developed city, and it's probably trying to make a case to the EBU that it is like grown up and responsible enough to host this kind of thing. It's kind of comparable to Geneva and Zurich in its kind of its ability to welcome that many people, organize them effectively, police it all well, and transport them in and out of the city. But yeah, it's like all Swiss cities. It's a very serious business city at heart. But I think the kind of the lands around, the people who are drawn to Basel to live there who are Swiss tend to be a bit more um, convivial, let's say.
And I wonder because what you're saying is like they're with there's lots of banks there, whether or not they might have some great new sponsors advertising all of these new tens of thousands of Eurovision fans to all get Swiss bank accounts and really
Yeah,
promote it in that
Raiffeisen,
sense.
Eurovision brought to you by Raiffeisen. Yeah, um,
Although, did it not used to be sponsored by them? Or am I
did it?
making that
What,
up?
Raiffeisen?
2009?
Oh, I had
Am I
no
making this
idea.
up? Maybe it was specific. I'm
This is a rabbit hole.
yeah, with the actual city itself. So I think we've established that this is probably your favorite
Hmm,
of the cities. If we're looking at the other two cities that were knocked out,
yeah.
Bern, which is supported by BLBN, or Zurich, I think it's obvious that you hate Zurich. Um,
Yeah.
judging by what you've said for the last two videos. Do you think that Basel, because I'm assuming you're saying it's better suited than Geneva, but do you think it would be better suited than Bern?
Um, I don't. Well, Bern is an odd kind of place to host an event like this. I feel because it is quite small in a way that
Mm.
you wouldn't expect a de facto capital to be, but it is small. It doesn't. It's not built like Geneva, Zurich, and Basel are to welcome the world into it. It's very much this is where we run Switzerland from. It's all their own little
Because it's
Swiss
only
thing.
like what 100, it's like less than
Yeah,
150,000 people,
yeah.
um,
And
which
its
is yeah.
catchment area is just small villages around it. That's kind of because the way that Switzerland works geographically is between Geneva and into Bern and down towards the Italian border. It's the Alps. And they kind of loop back around the bottom to the kind of St. Gallen and east of Zurich. But Basel and Zurich and Olten, which is in the middle of them, uh, is this big, long, flat plain. It's this big valley between the two, sort of the Black Forest the mountains of the Black Forest, and the Alps, and that's where most mid-sized cities are. So obviously, apart from the big ones, that's where like most mid to small sized cities are is in that big area. And so that economic area between Basel and Zurich is huge. That catchment area is massive, and Bern and Geneva aren't anywhere near them. Geneva's got its
Mm.
own kind of thing going on. It's got the lake. It's like even Lausanne is a bit more connected to as a center of like Romandy than Geneva is. Geneva looks to its airport and it looks to people coming in from France and people flying in. But Basel and Zurich are really kind of the European cities of the connected cities, connected to the rest of Europe by train lines are much more effectively than Basel and Geneva are. From Basel, you can go all the way to Berlin, to Hamburg. You can take a sleeper to Amsterdam. You go all the way to Milan. Zurich, same thing. They all run across that corridor. But yeah, but Zurich is really kind of like is more of Swiss as well, and has that a slight sort of more standoffishness and a bit kind of is a bit more formal as a city. And Bern is just where Switzerland is run from. There's nothing really else that happens there.
Because their choice of venue, it's not even really like a purpose
No, yeah,
venue. It was sort of like an odd, like we'll turn this into a music place. It's like it
that's not
again,
gonna.
sort of like expedition, ex that word, center, and yeah, it just seemed very strange. But also just looking at other cities, Switzerland, we didn't see anything from the Italian region. Obviously, we didn't see anything from the Romance region because there's like four people that live
Yeah,
there.
there are four people there.
Did that surprise you at all, or as someone who's very familiar with Switzerland, or
No, Ticino is very much its own little universe. The Italian bit of Switzerland, it's very, very disconnected from the rest of Switzerland. Like it's very hard to get to there. Um, uh, and they have their own thing going on, and they have their own problems. They've got their own complications to deal with. And it's also there is really only Ticino, so Lugano, and there's not really. I can't think of anywhere like a logical place to host it. There's not like a logical transport link. There's not like Basel and Geneva where you can just go over the border and stay, or you can get in on a train. Like it is literally just that and some tiny Italian towns in the mountains. So I'm not hugely surprised about that.
hmm.
Even though it is an amazing place.
Hmm. Well, I'm definitely excited to visit Basel based on what you've said. So in the last one, we finished off the video by saying where you prefer. I prefer Geneva, you prefer Basel. So where do you think it will be? Do you think it's going to be Basel or do you think it's going to be Geneva?
Well, this goes back to what I was saying in the Neva video, where I think it is like an ideological choice almost.
Mhm.
They both could do it, and they would both do probably as good as a job as each other. I would prefer Basel because I think it's more of an artistic city, and it'd be more. There's more to discover in what it is, and I think Geneva. But does the EBU want to have a competition held in their back garden where they can police it really effectively, and the local population will probably be used to the disruption that comes, or does it want to be try and make it fun in Basel? And I'm not sure Eurovision is going. I think the dynamics of it. I think the protesting in that would happen in Basel, and how much and how small the city and how under like how that would be such a part of how people are like such a image of what it would look like in Basel. I think they would go to Geneva.
So it's interesting to the EBU because although the EBU is involved, it is still firmly like SRG SSR
Yeah.
choice. I think I'm agreeing. Like they probably will go for Geneva. It feels like it would be more of an iconic choice if
Mm.
they're really wanting to say it's like, look, we host Eurovision, all these like these iconic cities, and Geneva does have that status of being this global city, whether it's like that's justified or not, as we was mentioned in the previous video, which once again we definitely encourage you to listen to. Yeah, I think there's more of like a particular vibe that you
Mm.
get with Geneva compared to than you do with Basel, or even that you would have had with like Zurich or Bern. It just feels like more of a Eurovision host city.
Yeah, it's big and it's the right level of big.
Mhm.
In this, it's a big city in a small country, whereas Basel's a mid-sized city or medium-sized city in a small country.
Yeah, because seldom do we actually get Eurovision in the cities like Basel. Like we had it in Malmo because Stockholm was unavailable because of Taylor Swift. Um, yeah, Liverpool was a bit different, but then I think the UK cities are a bit different in terms,
Yeah,
and like London was never really an option because their bid was absolutely shocking.
yeah.
But really, like all the other places, like Tel Aviv made sense as the city, Kiev made sense, Lisbon made sense. There, Rotterdam over Amsterdam made
Mm.
sense. Like these, we so seldom have the likes of those Basel cities that I think, as fun as it would be based on how you've definitely sold me on wanting to go to the city, I do think that they're probably going to be Geneva.
Yeah, yeah. Because you can imagine it taking over the town, but still working and not bringing
Mhm.
the town to a shutdown. Is way that Basel, like when a football match happens in Basel, it shuts down the station. If FC Basel win, it shuts down the station
Mhm. And I
effectively.
think we do need to consider like the impact that that has on the locals. Like, yeah, they're getting like the boost of tourism, but their whole city is being shut down for like 3 weeks. Like
Yeah.
that does cause stress, and obviously, if there is so many commuters coming into the city, it's like Eurovision does need to have its like it needs to know to have the correct impact on different cities like that. And like, yeah, I think Geneva does make sense. Thank you so much for listening to our assessment of the two Eurovision shortlisted host cities. We're going to find out at the start of next month.
Yeah, they're having the meeting like 4th, 5th of August. They're doing the showing off the city on the 4th, 5th of August. So
So
presumably a
should
week after
be
that.
about a week or two time from this video being recorded, and we're looking so much so forward to that
Hearing your
Eurovision.
thoughts.
And we'll be giving you all the Eurovision with Slice Life in the run up to Eurovision 2025. Thank you so much for joining me today, Jonathan, and thank you all for listening to our video. This has been that Eurovision site. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Tumblr, Threads, Blue Sky, and make sure to listen to us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify for all of our interviews, discussions, podcasts, and more. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.